Oh, did you do
All right.
live?
I think
Okay.
we're here.
All right.
Everybody, welcome to Agents for Humans, the a place where we talk about how our coming agent friends are going to assist us in all sorts of ways, from our personal life to our work life, entertainment, all the things in between. At least that's the positive outlook. So, with that said, welcome everyone. I think it's a fun way to start is we just go around. We got our guest Rob Walters today. Maybe we can start with Rob. Basically, a little intro, bring us up to speed, and then the sort of question we always like to answer when we start this live stream is like, how do you define agents and agentic AI? So give us a little background, a little bit, bring us up to speed, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, thanks for having me on the show. We've known each other for a long time. I noticed your Mobo license plate in the back there from the old van. Um, and Joseph, good to see you too. We've also been friends for a long time. So, yeah, my background, I've done a little bit of everything. I was in school till I was like 32, then moved to San Francisco and had a bunch of different startup companies, really in lots of different things over the map. I had like a home blood testing company, not that one. and uh,
Not
and
Theranos.
then yeah, I had drones made out of Legos, did some factories in China.
Oh,
Then
you
I
did
did
that
some
with Amir?
cryptocurrency. Yeah, with Amir. Yeah, we did fly
Okay.
bricks. That was a lot of fun. And yeah, then I was in the first engineer at MobileCoin, so I did some cryptocurrency stuff. And yeah, most recently came back to San Francisco after doing some traveling to kind of figure out the next phase of my career. Obviously, that means how do you want to plug into AI? So I had a stint with Emmett Shear's company for almost a year, which is pretty fascinating just to learn more about reinforcement learning and multi-agent systems in that context of what an agent is. And then a couple of different startup things. I was briefly working with what is now Little Bird AI, which I think is doing some pretty exciting stuff. And most recently, I've kind of gone back to some of my academic roots, and I'm working on agentic layout for ASICs. So lots of things that can be done in real-world engineering, as well as with like software and haiku generation, which don't discount it. That's an important use case for LLMs. Uh, yeah, early in the GPT era, I made a lot of use out of ChatGPT writing, helping me write lots of impromptu love letters. So it's another good use case. Um, so yeah, I think this the other thread that I guess I would pick up in leading into the idea of what's an agent or what's agency is basically at the end of last summer, I had an opportunity to do uh, a hackathon, right? So I was at this artificial life conference in Japan, and for the hackathon, I decided that I would give it a shot to really embrace vibe coding for the first time. And because up until that point, I was very much, I mean, it's everybody's going through the same trajectory, right? Like you slowly start ramping down your use of Stack Overflow and ramping down Google search and starting to use, AI with a web interface. And, then you've got the codecs and CLI tools and things like that, which I always thought were pretty clunky. So I was very much in the mindset of I got to control the context a lot. And so then this hackathon was kind of like the first opportunity I had to really give it a shot. And I think, like many people, you realize once you give it a shot that this is actually the future. And so, that led to me deciding that I would very intentionally do everything behind a CLI interface from that point on. So now, just looking at the rest of my desktop, I have like 16 different terminals open, all running different orchestration layers on various projects. And it really is a golden age for scratching all of the creative urges that you have. Like,
And to like
uh,
meet you where you're at, right? So you're
yeah,
more familiar with, I remember actually you showing me years ago terminal. I'm like, okay, well, this is completely crazy. And so those, we talked about this, me and Joseph last time, the idea of like meeting people where they're at to use like these agentic or even just these AI processes. Some people are comfortable in terminal, others might be comfortable in, just a regular chat bot in a web UI. Others are kind of in a halfway spot where they're kind of like in a programming tool. They're not quite terminal, but they're a little bit more advanced than,
Yeah.
a
I mean,
UI.
we're going to get to the Star Trek future where, you're just talking to these things. And because I think ultimately all user interfaces kind of migrate to some mix of like haptic and conversation. But we already see like people dropping into various niches. I think that like using AI is ultimately like an extension of how you think. These are tools for you to think with, right? So I actually think everybody has to kind of find their own process. I ended up writing all my own orchestration stuff, and I think many other people have too. And that's because I want my tools to be the same shape as my hands, right? So these tools are really an extension of how I like to think about and problems. The other advantage of writing your own orchestration tools is that you are less likely to get shut down, with your like gray area participation and trying to push on what you can do with a subscription versus lots and lots of tokens and things like that.
Mhm.
So, I'm actually pretty happy that my packages are not widely used.
Mhm.
But yeah, it is fun. I have managed to like inject some of my workflows into employers and things like that, and gotten a lot of value out of them. But let's go
I'm
back to this
curious.
main question of agency,
Yeah,
right? Like
exactly.
I
Because
think,
you also
yeah,
mentioned briefly like your past three company experiences. You mentioned like the word, I think, agents or agentic in all of them, and it also sounds like they all maybe had slightly different flavors, right? And so there's a lot of
yeah.
different ways to interact, and even what it means. So give us a little bit of insight on that.
Okay, so the way I think about it is that a lot of people
I,
thought
I
that,
wanted to say
yeah,
also that Rob, I was kind of late to the game, and Rob kind of inspired me a few months ago because he's always been posting about all these crazy things he's doing with his orchestration system. And then we ended up getting tacos, and he told me about everything he's building, and I'm like, this is amazing.
All right,
This is clearly the future.
for those that maybe first of all need to even learn a little bit about like agentic means and agents, then there's another level of orchestration. So maybe you could even touch on that briefly when you chat
Yeah.
here.
But this
yeah.
guy's like 9 months ahead, so just please bear with
Exactly.
me.
I mean, at most, I think everybody's going to catch up real fast. Okay, so I think when people started out in AI, we thought we would do special neural net models, like generative models were kind of the idea, right? So if I have a task that I want to do, I need to like train my own model, or I need to fine tune a model or something like that. And then, I think that the frontier models have gotten so good so fast that it's actually been more productive to design pipelines and to think about like how do I think about these frontier models as having agency, and what I would define that as the ability to kind of like figure out what to do on their own, and how do I then combine that with instructions, checklists, things like that. And I think that we have lots and lots of good examples from the human world where various degrees of agency are required for different kinds of tasks, right? Like if sometimes you need to get a letter to Castro, and you need to like have somebody with super high agency to figure out what that even means and how it gets done. But like other times you need to assemble cars on a factory line, and one guy needs to like make sure that these bolts are tightened in the same way. And those jobs eventually get replaced by robots and things like that, but like that's because they have low agency requirements. So I think that the agentic framework for achieving things with AI is largely about reducing the agency, paradoxically, right? Like I actually am pretty skeptical of the need for one-shotting problems. Like, and if you sit down and you type into Claude Studio, let's go make $1 million, I think that you shouldn't expect it to work, right? But if you sit down and you break it down into what would you do first, right? Like, what would you do second? That's the mentality of an agentic pipeline.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then I guess you asked about orchestration. Orchestration is about like, I guess, building a company or a corporation, right, or an organization. So it's like now what I need to do is I want to simultaneously run a large team of these systems, and have them not get in each other's way.
Mhm.
Um,
So that's like where it starts to get really exciting. And I think that we're all like on this treadmill. I mean, it's more fun than a treadmill. But we're walking up the pyramid where we're learning as we step up, and it's cool. Like we get familiar with the place, and those that are curious are like, okay, what's the next rung at the ladder? We're all at different places, and like moving up. And so some are just like beginning to, get better at prompting, and then others are starting to add connections to their Claude, and they're starting to watch it as it like figures out, try different things, and they're starting to play with agentic processes, right?
Yeah.
And then there's others that might be vibe coding, and we're seeing how it's figuring things out. And sometimes we'll even see this sci-fi thing where it says, and we didn't even know this happened to me some months ago when I was beginning, or maybe the last month, and the vibe coding platform was like, I'm deploying multiple sub-agents to go do your bidding effectively, right? And then it'll report back. And so that's an example of it even orchestrating its own sub-agents. It's so crazy. And then there's like folks like you and, and beyond. I mean, I have these crazy podcasts where people are, and our friend Enki, he's like, yeah, I have hundreds of agents I'm orchestrating.
Yeah.
So it's like some mindsets I think are also very well suited for this concept, but all of us are starting to almost our bandwidth, our understanding is be like, hey, I could actually do these two things now simultaneously. What if I did three? What if I had a team of agents working on something? That's when it starts to get really exciting, it seems like.
Yeah, 100%. Like I think the challenge is to not go too deep into the spinning plates mentality, right? Like, and I think, and that's been part of the growing pains thinking about orchestration systems, is that you end up in a situation where you're trying to do 5 things at once, and it kind of becomes tedious. And so then when you recognize that friction, you're like, wait a minute, how can I make this happen more automatically? And so then you add layers and layers upon your orchestration. And then it's been a bit of a moving target. Like I basically use Claude Code CLI exclusively. And over the last, say, I guess like 9 months now, it's the sub agent support has gotten significantly better. So stuff that I was doing like last fall with like tmux and daemons and wrapping sub calls to terminal and things like that now
It's
are
like sort of more manual ways to do sub-agent.
it's just like using the operating system. So you're sort of doing this. You're doing sub agents but you're like doing it outside of Claude Code, right? But like the internal tools in the Claude Code CLI program have gotten much better. So now it's much easier to do things like set a goal or span out sub agents, things like that. So a lot of times now when I program, I literally just set the goal of processing all of the open issues using my orchestration stack, and then that just runs in the background. So it's like, something that used to take a lot of intention and interaction is now basically just like set it and forget it. And the new challenges are things like making sure that you do token rotation at the right rate, and managing 500 errors. Like, Claude sometimes has like blips that you have to like. So there's a lot of edge cases. And then, like at some point, Anthropic's going to turn off the faucet of subsidizing all of us. So there's also kind of like another thought, which is
that's in June 22nd, right? I think that's
well, I don't know. They keep sending emails that we changed
well,
our
I mean,
mind.
we already got our faucet turned off on Fable.
Yeah,
I got
exactly.
like 2 days out of it, and I did as much complicated stuff as I did just because I'm like, let's see what it can do. And it was interesting because it was so good at its output. And one of the last questions I asked Fable before it got, I'm setting up a Linux box with a whole bunch of different things. And that's for me, even to say that like a month ago, I would have not been able to, but like, so I'm setting up a Linux box with all this sort of custom stack, and which was informed by my AI research. And I'm like, I want to just make this super streamlined. So I got over to Fable. I'm like, hey, can you just like as much as possible, like automate the setup of this box? And it's like, yeah, no problem. I'll need a few things first from you, and then I'll come up with this plan. Came up with like a 10-step, super detailed plan. And I was like, this is amazing. I just got a tiny bit of homework to do, a couple of things to get in there before you get started. Do I need to use you to set this box up? And it was basically like, actually my plan's so great that you can use Claude Opus to set it up or whatever. You don't even need me. And
yeah,
and that was literally my last prompt. So then I got kicked off, and I wasn't able to use it. And it was amazing. Fable's plan was so great. And it was wild because it looked at, its own plan that it had put together. It then refined its plan even more. And then when I brought it even in using Opus, I saw it even working out things. And for me, like that's, I think the piece that you mentioned, that ability, that agency to solve problems. I used to be very into the world of automations, low code automations, and they were amazing. And people called them agents. It's like you trigger this thing and it does all this stuff and it reports back. But if one little thing breaks, it was very brittle. it could never be like, oh, this module or connection's broken, let me try something else. It's like, nope, it's broken. And that idea of like watching it say like, that didn't work, let me try this, because you're watching that, like, its thought process often. That's so mind-blowing, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's I think for people who haven't really pushed on this, it can be surprising. Like I a lot of times I feel like the the role that I have is to like AGI pill people, right? Like if you just get people to actually engage with it, you'll be very surprised. And like, everyone's afraid of like hallucination or being led down the wrong path. And it's true that these systems are pretty sycophantic and they will tell you all your ideas are good. But oftentimes I think about like, the fact that I was in school for so long and like had this training as a scientist, I think that if you hang on to your skepticism and you adopt a falsification mindset, right? Like you ask yourself, what are the experiments that I would need to do to make sure that I'm not fooling myself? And then you just have the agents do those for you, right?
Mm.
So like if you have a concrete goal, like I need this Linux box to be set up and it's got to, run, I don't know, pirate movies for me or whatever Dougie's up to. But like, yeah, I mean, like, I think if you have a clearly defined outcome, then you ought to be able to measure whether you achieved it or not. Um, so like, for example, one of the first projects that I think back in November, there was a lot of skepticism. You had a lot of people saying, "Oh, LLMs will never be able to write complex code." So, okay, well, what's complex code? SQLite. Okay, so I wrote a vibe-coded version of SQLite called VibeSQL. And the reason I thought it would work was that there were very well specified tests. So, there's a corpus of like 7.5 million SQL queries that are expected to run correctly. And there's like the internal test from SQLite. And so having that test metric as the goal made it relatively straightforward to write 600,000 lines of Rust with Claude code, and like it's kind of fun, right? And then as the project develops, you're like, oh, what am I doing this for? What's the interest here? And for me, it's oftentimes it's like I said, just to explore the tools to get better at them, and also to make something that it's somewhat interesting to me, right? So with VibeSQL, it was like, how can I trade storage space for speed, right? So databases either have to choose between columnar storage or row storage, and they each have like different benefits for the speed that the database can achieve. If you have columnar storage, then you can like pipeline certain types of operations and use like SIMD and like complex instructions that use more of the power that your CPU has. So but then there are other operations where row-wise is better. And so what I was trying to do was like, in the end, I was like, oh, what do I want VibeSQL to be? Well, it's going to be a database that just like deliberately stores in both formats and then routes the queries for optimal speed. But
So
yeah, it
you're
was a
using,
lot harder in November to do that than it is today. I think it would be
right.
about a week of work today to rewrite SQLite from scratch.
It's going so fast. I mean, I know Joseph, and I know Joseph. We haven't let you have like a word,
Yeah,
and
jump in.
you've been doing some wild stuff with that too. Like actually, the abilities that you've seen open up in these last months has seemed pretty profound. And I know we're also all using quite a lot of tokens, and also just like curious about some of the ways that, Rob, it sounds like you're doing a lot too. I got my subscription. I very rarely like have to use API stuff, but there was an interesting thing, and I'm going to hand it off to Joseph, but like, because I've been setting up an OpenClaw, and I was just talking to my buddy. He's like, I'm using so much. And I'm like, you're not using a subscription? He's like, no, I got to use my API credits. I said, no, you could use Codex. It gives you quite a lot. And you can actually use Anthropic subscriptions, not just API. And they're like, no, you can't. And I was like, actually, you can. You don't get tons with Claude, but they were going to introduce this. They were going to like really cut back, and they have cut back, but you get a little bit with your subscription now, at least with Claude, if you're using something like that. But I'm just curious about like token use, and I know you're doing some pretty wild stuff. I'm just curious about all that.
About to me?
Yeah.
I think that I think they rolled that back actually. They were
They
gonna
did. Yeah.
limit, yeah, okay. Yeah, they were gonna limit how much you could use it in a different harness. I don't know. I have so many thoughts about it because I think I got to the party pretty late, but I've been really diving into Codex and Claude, and I've got 5 subscriptions now. And because I got a second one once Fable came out, and I'm like, oh, I gotta use this. I ended up using a whole week within a few hours, and then I used another week within a few hours, and then it got cut off.
Okay, if you
Uh,
can you tell us, like, if you can tell us, what are you doing that much of in that short of a period?
uh, I'm building Trusted Router, which is an open router clone that lets you try out any kind of model on any kind of provider, and then you can do evals on things. I'm doing something really cool right now, which is OpenRouter published some research that says that they can actually get Fable level quality by just fusing other smaller models
Hmm.
and then get there. So I'm reproducing that research right now. And then I'm going beyond it because actually I can also use these open models to do band research like LLM research and cybersecurity and biology research. So actually I'm working on reproducing Mythos 5 level using trusted router fusion. So
And you're
I'm
working
hoping
on
to
a
have
lot of these concurrently, right?
yeah, I mean, so what Rob said is it's hard to like build a bunch of different projects. I find it's fits my ADHD quite a bit, but also, I'm waiting for something to compile and then I have another idea. So I'm kind of building all this stuff. The thing is, it does kind of come together in a sense, like I'm building a piece of hardware that it connects to a cloud, and the cloud is part of an OS, and it's all called like Quill OS and Quill Cloud and Quill Hardware. And then the
Hmm.
trusted router was originally Quill Router, and it's just going all the way up and down. And I'm eventually going to build like a Quill data center and a
Hmm.
Quill harness as well, like a Quill code type of thing, Cloud Code competitor.
Hmm.
And I think the other thing I'm burning tokens on a lot is I'm cloning Mac OS, so you can like run any iOS app or Mac OS app on Linux, compile and run it on Linux.
How much are you cloning it, and how much are your agents like cloning it? How are they even doing that?
My experiment is to try to do as little as possible and see if it can figure it out. And I did find that Fable was able to just burn through it much faster. Like it was able to spend 1 billion tokens and complete a full app. Partly, Rob wrote an app in Swift on Mac OS, and so I had a whole day worth of Fable, or a whole week's worth of Fable tokens, making sure that converts perfectly with a camera, live. It's a bunch of these features, every menu item, every click, um, and then the more apps I
Yeah,
have, the more I can prove that they're converted. And
Mhm.
I can
so,
show you the inspiration for that. I mean, I found this
oh
old
yeah,
USB microscope
yeah, I'd love for you to try
in
it
a
out,
file. Yeah, I haven't tried
verify
it
that
out on
I'm
Linux
I'm
yet
not
because I'm on a
crazy,
Mac
that
today.
it's actually
But
working.
yeah, it was like 2 days to get because I didn't have any software for this old USB microscope. So I was like, oh, I bet I can make it work again. And so like 2 days of vibe coding basically, and I have like a microscope app that worked with Mac OS. And then
Mhm.
what Joseph's been working on with, I guess it's mostly like porting some of the
The
Swift
libraries, yeah,
libraries. Yeah. So
yeah.
like things that like expose the USB web camera interface to a program layer that are like built into the Mac OS layer. You don't have those on Linux. So you want to have something that provides a translator.
And also the UI. I want the thing is I want CoilOS to feel I want it to be Swift first operating system that feels as good quality of UX as Mac OS. And how do I do that? Well, I have to get all the amazing Swift developers with a lot of good taste to be
Mhm.
writing Swift code that works the same. The best way
Yeah.
to do that is just to make it work perfectly. And so the vision is you just write so everybody, even Claude, supposedly Claude didn't do anything, but yet everything is written in Electron, like Claude's Electron, Codex Electron, OpenCode's Electron,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Electron is terrible. It's so slow and bloated and not
Oh.
native and ugly. It's put in so much effort to make it good. But what if you could just write Swift really fast, really elegant language, really beautiful libraries? People don't do it because it's only a Mac.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah,
what? This
I've
is
used Tari for most things instead of Electron, but like for the scope
Tori's
project, I really
Tori is
wanted.
Rust.
Yeah, but it does wrap HTML for the
It
interface
also wraps a
definition.
browser, so it's all
Yeah,
browser stuff. And
yeah,
the
Hmm.
what Claude unlocks is that we don't need to use JS everywhere anymore. We can actually just use it native, fast, beautiful language with beautiful libraries.
This is like, I think, an interesting point. because a lot of people, especially like earlier on in their vibe coding thing, it's amazing to see actually people. My first vibe coding was months, like, I don't know, like a half a year ago, accidentally, when I asked Claude for a result. I thought it was just going to give me a lit, and it made like an artifact. And I'm like, and it was like, oh, do you want to download this as HTML? And I was like, holy crap, I understand this now. And now everyone's sort of creating these HTML artifacts. And actually people are like sending each other HTML pages as attachments. It's kind of funny. Like they haven't really closed the gap very well. And now they have a little bit, you can host it, but it's not editable. There's a whole bunch of I built an app that you can send artifacts and host them very easily and then edit them with an actual text editor. So it's easy to edit artifacts, which is kind of one of those things that would be nice. But point being that everyone's kind of getting to these various stages. A lot of people are looking at vibe coding, like build a website or build like a simple app, right? They're just like Joseph said, they're in the browser. They're like creating stuff in the browser. And then I heard my buddy was like, oh, I didn't want actually this extension broke on my Chrome. And I was paying $15 for it anyway, and it broke. He's like, so I just vibe coded a Chrome extension. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And so the other day I was like writing, I think it was late, and my writing when I am working late just starts to get real sloppy. And I'm like, damn, I just don't even, and I get tired of like copying it, getting it over to an AI and being like, hey, clean this up, and then copy pasting it back. And I'm like, what? I've never written anything for my Mac before. I was like, hey, Claude, could you I opened up, instead of opening up a folder with a project in it, like a website or an app, I opened up just the root of my computer. And I was like, Claude, could you just create like a right-hand click script for me with like these 4 options? I want it to be professional. I want it to be just cleaned up. I want it to be shorter, a few other little things. Here's my open router or trusted router I'm now using. Shout out to Joseph. My key, can you just make that into a right-hand click menu? It's like, yeah, no problem. Literally within, I think, 15 minutes, I had designed a little Mac add-on. I never thought to do that. And so my point bringing that up is this ability, as people progress, they'll even start to break out of the browser and be like, I just kind of want an app that's right on my machine that's completely custom to me. And like you guys are already doing that naturally, but that's a really cool thing to realize,
Yeah, I think for people that like sort of DIY stuff, this can be a real boon. I guess 2 things come to mind. Like one is, when I first got my 3D printer, one of the things I did was like, my car had this like missing plastic part that was busted in the back, and I couldn't like snap on this thing. And it was just like so cool to be able to like make a plastic piece that fit just right to be able to like fix my car, right? And so I think that's it, right? Like you identify the friction in your life and you want to like use your tools to satisfy that. Like example for me, like something I just made for myself recently was a printer driver that allows me to like print to Rippling for like reimbursements, because I have a bunch of different Google accounts and like I can't like forward email easily to like Rippling to get paid back for some like work expense unless I like first forward the email to my work account and then from the work account to Rippling. So I just made a printer driver that does that, right? So you like hit print to Rippling, and then I can do that from anywhere in my operating system. So, and it's like like these projects, it's like I think you should open source them, because like why not? Maybe you'll inspire somebody else. And I think as people get into their like DIY programming journey, like you owe it to yourself to learn how to use GitHub. I think it's mostly free.
Totally.
Maybe it's like $3 a month. I actually know
No,
what the
it's
lowest
free.
tier is.
I got like 12. I had no projects. I now have.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what it was. I thought you could like drag in images in there and like, like I had no idea 6 months ago. Now I got like 12 projects, shared repos across all sorts of things. So it's not a huge learning curve.
Yeah,
and
I think, and the other thing to note is that Claude knows how to use it. So you just need a little bit of vocab, right? Like you need to know what a repository is. You need to know what a commit is. But like, have Claude give you the TLDR, explain it like I'm 5 version, and just get yourself up to speed on how the open source world works, because then you can like be part of the conversation.
And then you realize how to connect it to something like Netlify and have like as soon as you push out to your GitHub, it automatically deploys to Netlify. And now you have, at the very least, like a Netlify link that you can share with people. But one extra step is like you can put it on your own domain. So you can be knocking out apps or websites for literally the cost of a domain per year, $12 for .coms, right?
Yeah.
It's like the gap when I was early on 20 years ago, the web launched, and I'm like, I want to be a web designer. And really, to be a super valuable web designer, all I had to do was figure out how to connect a registrar with hosting. And it was like that one connection scared most people off and prompted me to have a business for many years as a web designer because most people could
Mm.
not learn that thing.
Yeah.
So it's not a big step for people to be like, just, hey, push it to GitHub, even if you don't fully understand that. Go into your Netlify, connect it to that GitHub, and now push it out. And you got your
Yeah.
thing that you're building live, right? It's not so crazy.
Yeah, there's also GitHub Pages. I mean, I'm a big fan of Cloudflare. I think Cloudflare does a lot of things well, and so I think yeah, I mean, you have to
And that
kind
can
of
do the
like,
same thing.
well, Cloudflare is like a pretty much a full service provider, right? So they're an
Yeah.
alternative to Google or AWS or
Yeah,
uh,
I use Cloudflare Workers a lot. Pretty easy.
Mm,
yeah,
The
yeah.
agents know how to use it very quickly.
Yeah. And so,
cool.
so the difference between Cloudflare and like hosting, like buying a computer at renting a computer rather at Google or Amazon is that Cloudflare has a virtualization layer. So they actually are running the same engine inside of Chrome, right? It's like V8 is actually like virtualizing all of their serving. So it's very inexpensive for Cloudflare to host a website. Like probably orders of magnitude cheaper for Cloudflare to host a website than for Google. So for a low traffic website, like I think it's actually free. Like I probably have like 50 websites on Cloudflare now, all of which are getting less than 5K traffic a month. But like, they're art projects. It doesn't matter, right? Like,
Hmm.
like it's not my main job. And each time you try a new project, you're learning a little bit more and you're increasing your skills. Um, but maybe we should go back to the token spend issue,
Yeah.
because I think that we are rapidly approaching potentially a space where people need to start thinking about this again, because we're still in the early days where effectively we're all being VC subsidized, right? This is like Uber rides being ridiculously cheap, and then as like the market matures, you start passing more costs on to the consumer.
Mm.
I think that a subscription from Anthropic is probably 20x subsidized. So if you are, it's the gym model. So they're hoping that not too many people are maxing it out all in 3 hours like Joseph. But like, if you're actually
Fable
using
makes it
all the
easy.
tokens, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, right.
yeah, Fable indeed makes it really easy if they ever turn it back on. But yeah, I mean, like, I think step one is thinking about what model you're using. So don't always use Opus, start using Sonnet, things like that. Step two is probably not thinking about it, but using something like Trusted Router or something like that. And then as time goes on, I think you might start thinking about how do I use these open weight models like a Kimi or a Quinn or something like that. And the tricky part is that they aren't as well integrated into the CLI wrapper. So the things like Claude Code CLI, you can't actually use it very effectively with Quinn
Hmm.
unless you like build various glue layers in the middle. But at the sum, you
Why
can
is that?
basically have, well, it's just because the integration with the tool is not perfect, is the way I
With
think about it.
with the harnesses of Cloud Code, you're saying, or Open
Yeah,
Code?
and it's we also don't really know what a harness is yet, right? Like is a harness is a harness just a pipeline that's like something like a task list for an agent, or is a harness something like Claude Code CLI or Pi or one of these other like uh, things that like does a lot of this orchestration under the hood? Yeah, I don't know how the terminology is evolving.
Which is, or so is that kind of what you're saying, like with Claude Code? 'Cause I don't really understand how it works. So Claude Code itself is sort of a orchestrator of an LLM. It's like Claude Code
Yeah,
is an
Claude Code's like 250 megabytes, right? Like, so what is all that code doing? And
right.
at the end of the day, there's an API that's calling out to an LLM where you feed it tokens and you get a continuation. So I'm
Hmm.
sending 100 words and I ask, what are the next words? And those words come back, right? But all of that gets wrapped by multiple layers of structure.
Hmm.
And so when you type in, yes, please continue, that gets interpreted by a mixture of code and API calls. But at the thing that you pay for is the server API calls, right? So those are the things that someday you're going to have to replace with either a local LLM or LLMs that you are renting the compute for. So you were talking about like being able to configure a Linux box with Claude. Well, Claude's also really good at configuring AWS and Google Cloud. So
Yes.
it
It's
is
great
not
at
impossible.
Terraform.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
and so
really,
it
yeah.
is if you have the vocabulary, it is not impossible for you to set up a Google Cloud account have Claude create a machine for you using, they renamed it to Gemini Enterprise, I think. But you can actually set up a machine on Google Cloud that will cost you $20 an hour to rent, but then you can run a 500 billion model, open weight model, and you can use it as much as you want with the terminal choice of your choice, like Claude Code CLI, for $20 an hour. And so at some scale, that will be very tempting. I think that there hasn't been a huge driver to go in that direction yet because of all the subsidies that are floating around. But when things change, there'll be new market pressures and possibly other people offering convenience wrappers around this, right?
Mhm.
Even Cloudflare offers like a universal AI front end that you can pretty relatively easily spin up. And I think they give you like 1 million free tokens a month or something. So like I oftentimes will write like image generation. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
still paying Midjourney monthly for some reason, even though I never use it anymore. But Cloudflare, it's relatively easy to set up your own image generation service on Cloudflare, and then you can like have that be part of your API surface to like call out for images when you're writing papers and things like that. We're making slide decks.
Look, Codex makes images, but you can also access Nano Banana Pro or anything on Trusted Router, and then you can
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
compare prices and do different things.
I mean, I
yeah,
think you're really right. It's going to be interesting. There's a few
Thanks,
interesting
Colin, by the
things.
way. Hi, Colin. Hi, Brad.
Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
Hey guys.
There's a few interesting things happening, right? So there's definite subsidization going on. At the same time, probably there will, in time, like RAM and things are maybe going up right now, or they're very high. In time, the sort of pipeline of producing these things will probably become, these chips will get stronger. They'll get hopefully cheaper. Models will become more efficient. Models will be specialized. People's understanding of either when to use specific ones, just like you said, like for example, I quickly realized, especially when I was on the lower code plan, that I could do a lot of the planning with Opus, but then the plans, just like I said with Fable, then the actual implementation of the work could be done with Sonnet because the plans that Opus made were so good, right? And so we'll get better at that. Hopefully, a lot of us will be learning how to be token smart, especially when we start having to pay for it more.
Yeah.
And then also services like Trusted Router will hopefully allow for the more everyday person understand what it is that you're needing to do and route you accordingly, to the what you really need for that. I mean, that might be challenging, but I think that's a really great service. And the flip side of it, people will
So
start to value
I would
things more. Like
along
they'll
that
be like,
line. I was thinking, and I can whip this up today. Imagine a triangle, and then the top of the triangle is smartness, and then this side is cheapness, and the other side is speed. And then
yeah,
you can do trade off between the three. And if you're like more speedy, then it's more expensive, or you want smartness. And then like what if
that
there's a
was like that
website.
was the age old thing: fast, cheap, and good. You can only have two
Exactly.
ever.
And
Yeah.
then we map the trade-off, and then you write in, oh, here's my task. And it's like look up the sports scores. And then it's gonna say, okay, that you only need this level of cheapness, but then you can still choose between speed or cheapness. And then
Hmm.
or you might say like, oh, code up this game. And then you can choose like, oh, do I want something really smart or something really cheap? And then you like choose within that. And then based on that,
Yeah.
it'll recommend a model. It'll say, oh, you should use GLM on Cerebrus,
Hmm.
or you should use Xiaomi. I guess there should be another toggle of like how privacy sensitive you are or
Well,
something.
that's
But
true too. That's why I think a lot of what you're doing. I mean, my last point was why Trusted Router is really interesting, and I love what you're doing with that. I think like the other couple of things that, like what Rob said, you can rent space maybe in a remote server, but maybe you don't even need something that powerful, and that's the hence there's like all this excitement around Mac Minis having your own little local machine
Yeah.
or something less powerful
I,
like
I
a
think
VPN.
unfortunately it's like I think it's really hard to expect good results without spending about $10,000 right now. Like, and your options are like a DGX system from NVIDIA or like a higher power Mac Studio, but they're not that great. And like the next level is like buying yourself like an RTX 6000 or some like pretty expensive GPU, but then you've got the power and the noise and everything else. And like, I think unless you're really going 24/7, like you're better off renting. Like
Hmm.
Lambda, I rent GPUs on Lambda for some of the machine learning experiments that I've been doing and things like that. And it's just not that expensive. Like the reality is that you don't need it 24/7. And if you want to rent some GPUs for an hour, like Claude Code can help you rent those GPUs. And it'll cost you a couple $100 for the entire week. And it's expensive, but it's a lot cheaper than trying to like roll your own equipment. Um,
Rent them out. Can you like rent them and then when you don't use them, like rent them on SF Compute? Have you tried that
I mean,
when you're not using them?
I haven't played with that. I mean, I think the issue here is like do you really want to have your home be a data center? And I think for most people the answer is no, until we
Right.
like figure out how to wrap our water heaters with compute, which maybe someday we'll do that,
Totally.
right? But for now, I think the sweet spot for most people is staying with the subsidized plans.
Hmm.
And then when that starts to go away, then I think most people will end up wanting to rent from the big cloud providers. And you can also shop around, like if you want to be clever about it, start a company. And when you start a company, you can get tens of thousands of dollars of free credit from all the cloud service providers,
They
right?
all
And
want
it's
you to
it
be on
they all
them.
want you to be on theirs. And by the way, it costs like what is it, like $500 to start a company on Stripe Atlas, or what's the other one that people are using these days? I think Joseph, you were mentioning another incorporation.
Clerky to incorporate.
Yeah, Clerky or Stripe
Clerky.com.
Atlas are both good choices. So you can start a company and then for the paperwork overhead and what is it? What is it? You have to pay Delaware $500, $800 a year. I can't remember what it is. Like
Yeah.
maybe it's $1,000 a
Maybe
year.
200.
Yeah, come register it in
Yeah.
Florida, guys. It's a lot cheaper than that.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say this is, I want to just be devil's advocate here too, because we're seeing people be like, wow, Fable's so 10, twice as expensive or 10 or 5 times, whatever it is, right, as expensive. Sure. And then these are being subsidized. The flip side is, people starting to realize, and this is why actually it's so important for companies to begin quantifying their ROI with AI tokens. Like there's been these ridiculous things I'm sure you saw, like Meta or I mean other companies to
Yeah,
see which
500 million or something. There's
well,
somebody. Yeah.
well that was crazy.
Yeah.
Someone didn't put a cap on it and they spent $500 million. I don't know what company could do that accidentally and sort of laugh it off. It must have been one of the big ones. But point being that to judge this was so crazy. I can't even imagine this ever was okay. To judge the AI adoption of their employees, they were doing leaderboards based off of token usage. And so employees were just figuring out how to waste crazy amounts of tokens, horribly wasteful, just to show that they're adopting AI when really they're not. All that to say, like when most probably aren't using it for any real thing. And now they're starting to be like, well, that's obviously ridiculous. Who had that idea? How did that pass? But now it's really about like outcome maxing. And this is where it gets actually interesting and is something expensive. If you can quantify that something you did spend $500 in tokens to do a task that would have cost you $5,000, that starts to actually look like a pretty inexpensive purchase of that model, right? And so that's what's interesting as this kind of subsidization gives way for token pricing. Those that will just always want it to be inexpensive, and there's ways around that. Some of the ways we talked about. There's companies that just want it reliable, fast, the best, and they'll be like, yeah, that's just a business decision right there. Like it's
Yeah.
so I think it's an interesting other way to look at it.
I mean, ultimately, this is why we're all nervous about what happens to employment, right? I mean, and I would push even further. Like, it's not what you can do for $500; it's what you can do for 2,000 kilocalories, right? Like, the energy parity of thinking is already well within an order of magnitude between a person and an LLM. So, like, you have these systems that are like
Is
energetically
it?
better. Yeah, you can do the
Okay.
math. Like, it's energetically for just if you think about like I think the back of the envelope I had was like how many hours a day can a person think, like how much better is an LM thinking than a person, like basal metabolism of a human versus like data center cost, energy per token, which by the way could still come down by orders of magnitude with like technological development. And so like we're going to be in a place where it's like objectively the right decision to feed the computers versus the humans for a lot of kinds of
Mm,
tasks, right? And so like
so
yeah, I
replace
don't know. That's
farmland with solar panels. What
yeah,
do you say?
but like the people who are making the mythos and the fable, like they're on the singularity trajectory, right? Like we're trying to get something to the level where it can create the next best thing and be on this escape trajectory. And like I don't think most of the problems that most of us have require that, right? Like Opus can already solve open math conjectures that have been open for 80 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, And
Right. Even
like,
if things stopped, even if development stopped right now, there's so much latent potential of people still not even, they're just using like a just chat bot, like, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah, and I'm excited to use Fable to write even better haikus, right? Like that's a valid use case, and I don't want to knock anybody for it, but but I think for most things and for most workflows, like it, it's not going to be cost competitive to pay Anthropic 10x more for most tasks. It's like you were saying, like create a plan, throw it to Sonnet, figure out how to allocate the tokens in a cost effective way.
About the
Yeah,
singularity,
yeah,
I don't necessarily like on Anthropic's viewpoint on it and what they're pitching about what's going to happen. And then I also don't like their solution, which is that they should control everything and only give the access to Mythos to their friends or giant institutions that
yeah,
oppress us. So I wrote this thing called Prometheus Bench here, and that is a new benchmark that measures how many refusals your AI gives you in cybersecurity, in LLM research, which is a
yeah.
very
Or
controversial,
biological
or
research, right? Like
biology,
you're
or
not
not even
allowed to.
research. Anything in
Yeah.
biology is banned,
mm,
basically, with Fable 5.
Well,
That's
look, I mean,
crazy.
people talk about AI, AI safety is not just a conversation about, putting guardrails about raising good, good children, right? It's also a conversation about responsible use. And I think it's actually there's a valid argument to be made that people should have some safety rails in place, right? Like I think that driver's licenses are a good thing. Like I think we should have more gun control. Like, I think AI control is valid, and it's not, I don't think every teenager in the United States needs to be able to, try and hack websites for fun, because, uh, but I also think that like there should be some kind of responsible access program for the broadest set of people possible. And I can say
yeah.
that it's a pretty frustrating customer experience. Like one of my projects is like this
Yeah.
cryptocurrency that I'm interested in developing. So I've been like trying to do like a progressive cryptocurrency that like effectively taxes wealth concentration, because one of the big problems with like Bitcoin is that the Gini coefficient of Bitcoin is actually really bad. So like there's extreme wealth concentration in the Bitcoin world, which I think diminishes its appeal as a currency system. So I was thinking about like, oh, how do I make a cryptocurrency that both offers like progressive taxation and privacy controls? And that's actually a really hard thing to do, because if you have privacy, then how do you identify who's rich, right? So how do you effectively like improve the Gini coefficient situation and still give people privacy? So
Mm,
it's kind of a side project, an interest of mine to just try and square that circle. But
mm.
ultimately, I was like, oh, well, I'd like to also make sure that I don't have any like security bugs in this software. And it was a real challenge wrestling with Fable, less so with Opus, but like last
Yep.
week, that's what I spent my Fable time on. Was like, oh, let's see if I can run my security audit recipes again and see what I can find. And you get shut down pretty hard, pretty fast. And I
Yeah. I
really
saw a lot
wish
of
Yes,
there was,
people
yeah,
complaining
exactly.
about that.
I can't secure my own thing,
yeah,
but like
yeah.
an
But
airline
how
can
how would
secure
you
their thing.
design an access program, right? It's like very expensive to vet all these people. And like I'm just some random dude. Like Anthropic's, why should Anthropic spend the time to learn whether I'm well-meaning or have some like revolutionary intent?
Yeah, I mean, even some sort of like, know your customer platform or
Yeah.
program. I don't
I mean,
really
we have it
know.
in banking, right? Let me
Yeah.
maybe just having like give me your real world identification. Like at least then
Hey,
we
this is
we have like
good
accountability.
segue, guys. I got a question for y'all because especially you brought up banking and you brought up crypto. Some, updates around and bringing it back to agents too and bringing those together, like Visa, Coinbase, opening up their worlds to agentic AI. Thoughts on the pros and cons? Would you be excited about giving an agent some cash and seeing what could happen? Like having an agent pay on behalf of you? What are thoughts around where money and agents meet?
You want to go first?
I have not given my agent money. Well, no, I tried to get. So Claude is really antsy about giving money, even when I'm like, give me credits on my internal trusted router account, and it's like, sorry, I can't handle money. Whereas Codex is great about it. It's like, okay, I'll deploy this, I'll get this key, I'll give you credits. So I definitely trust these LLMs now to actually spend wisely. So actually, I'm actually okay giving them a credit card. I haven't yet. I think Claude would refuse it anyway, but I think it's a good idea.
I've given the systems the ability to drive compute expense, right? So setting up runs on Lambda or setting up computers on GCP or AWS, and so those all end up eventually they're effectively the same thing as spending money.
Yeah.
And like so for some of the experiments that I was doing, I got curious about like whether whether LLMs learn symmetries or not, right? And so it turns out that like most LLMs in the latent space are just using lookup tables. But the idea was like originally someone was telling me about this trick where you like permute your training data set to generate better data. And this has been used in like optical character recognition for a long time, where you take the image and you feed it with different rotations because you want to train a system that is like doesn't care about the orientation of the letter and things like that. But like I was like, oh well, permuting the facts randomly would definitely give you a much larger training set. But like, doesn't that then imply a symmetry about the world that like the order of things doesn't matter as much? Like, and clearly when we talk about things like the order of the terms does matter. So this set me down this whole like rabbit hole of like investigation. And at one point I was like, oh, well, like, like I need a system that has even more symmetry. So we started doing like energy levels of molecules because like depending on where the carbons are, they have different electron symmetries, right? So I started working at like a mixture of experts thing that would like learn which symmetry model to like route different carbon atoms to and things like that. But like in the course of those experiments, I had to kind of like negotiate with Claude to like get it to understand what I thought a lot of money was or a little bit of money or like don't do this, do this. And so I think that Anthropic's done a pretty good job of like trying to control runaway costs.
Yes. Yeah, it's very thoughtful. When you tell it, it's like, oh, I don't know if it's too much. I think, and then it asks you.
I definitely, with my OpenClaw, because I have some connections to things that spend money, just like you're talking about. I use like a lot of interesting scraping tools like Appify, and it's been fun because it'll be like, hey, I'm connected to your Appify. I can spend money on it, so like just beware. And I'm like, okay, here's the limitations. I'm going to allow you to go find an inexpensive one, spend this much, but let me know if it's going to be more than that. Prioritize the free ones, all this kind of stuff. You have to train it a little bit. And I did notice that recent OpenClaw seems like it's a little bit better at like really making sure that you are not overstepping the early security issues. So I think that's pretty interesting. And I mean, I'm sure that they probably are easier when you're asking them to fill up their own tokens. I bet maybe they're a little bit more easygoing about that. But yeah, I do think that's pretty interesting. I mean, I met somebody who is building a box that basically is trying to figure out patterns in trading. And it's like, and it's like, you can get API access to E-Trade. It's going to be really interesting to see who does this well and who has some pretty terrible stories from it. So just like anything, it seems like give a little playground, like give limited access to something, so you don't become that $500 million company that that lost all that on tokens. Give them a little playground, like build trust with these agents piece by piece. People that give it full access to their computer, and then they're like, I don't know if you saw the news story about the husband that lost his wife's entire life of writing. It just must have been a hard dinner when that happened. But just try it with like maybe a folder. You try it with $100. Like one of my experiments I'm coming up with is making a little marketing sub-agent of, I have my OpenClaw Nexus and it has within it a few sub-agents. I'm trying to not spin too many plates. I'm just trying to little one at a time, but I'm like, Marky Mark is my sub-agent for marketing. And the dream is I can give Marky Mark $100 and be like, hey, where do you put this for a Google search or whatever?
You've done it? You've done that?
Yeah, just putting the tools together, the APIs. Okay. But then it's like worst case.
You're gonna do it for next week?
Wait, what?
I'm really excited about these results. Are you gonna do it for next week? What is it?
Right now I'm doing a pretty inexpensive thing where it's looking at sentiment analysis and a pain point listening on LinkedIn, X, and Reddit I have a app that I made a side project, and it's looking for pain points that people are talking about that my app solves and suggesting little responses to go out and build some traction that way. So I just gave it a simple thing to test for marketing, but I want to gear up for Marky Mark being like, hey, Marky Mark, can I give you $100? Can you turn it into $500? Like, that'd be pretty sweet, That would be pretty sweet. And with the trading bots, I don't know what you guys think about AI actual trading, but wouldn't that be cool? especially with Coinbase, and these other things opening up access for agents.
I think you can probably get like a debit card with a limit on it, or I don't know how it works. I mean, you can also box these agents to a limited spend at layers that are completely outside of the prompt, right?
Yeah.
And that seems prudent. It's
Like
interesting.
on
It's like,
Trusted Router, you can limit
yeah, there you go. You can bracket your expenses.
Exactly.
Each key
Set
is
a
limited.
budget.
Yeah.
I think that it's an interesting question, which is how many safeguards do you want? So like I have a operating system alias where when you type in Claude, it automatically adds the dangerous mode flags and things like that.
Do you put it in a
And
VM on your computer?
I don't.
Me neither. I trust it.
But I'm also
I'm
not
just
using
like
things
give it
like
everything.
OpenClaw, right? Like I trust it because I wrote all of it to some
Right.
extent. But like,
And you understand this world well enough.
yeah, but I'm also I have a backup program, right? Like Backblaze is not expensive. Like back your stuff up, and
Right.
like so yeah, I think that. And by the way, there's also hooks. There you can add to Cloud Code CLI. You can add hooks that guard against certain kinds of prompts, right? So I have like various like catastrophic deletions and GitHub commands blocked at the prompt hook level
Yeah.
as well, and that just feels prudent. But like
Hmm.
you can
But
go so much
hasn't Claude
faster.
built that in? It hasn't Claude built that in as well already?
I have no idea. Yeah, I mean, maybe there are protections. Like I said, Cloud Code is a very fast moving program. So
Yeah.
whatever Cloud Code CLI is today, it's going to be a different Cloud Code CLI in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just keeps getting better and better. I don't know. I'm kind of a big Anthropic stan, and I think it just comes from habit, right? Like the switching costs are high when you're used to a system.
Right. And also from the best, I mean, like, there's some definite questionable behaviors across all the big frontier models. So it's like choose your one that you think aligns most valuably, who's feeling the
Yeah.
most charming at any one point. There's a lot of who's PR. I mean, PR is just a whole nother story. Like the tech industry really missed an opportunity, often misses opportunity to invest in good public relations, and really missed it with AI. I mean, the ridiculousness around so much of the public story and the divisiveness we're seeing, like the polarization. Actually, just yesterday, I was listening to a podcast that talked about the amount data centers used currently in the U.S. is like, I don't know, like 150 like billion watts or something like that. And the almond, or no, it was it was a gallon. We were talking about water. 150 billion gallons of water across all AI data center usage. The almond industry, 1.3 trillion gallons of water. And I came back and I'm like, let's try oat milk. Maybe I want to do my part. If I'm going to use a lot of AI, like let me at least drink oat milk, I guess.
It's hard to be an environmentalist and square that with the fact that like energy consumption and quality of life are kind of correlated. But like I think at the massive population level, like we make a lot of choices. Like we use a lot more power in the United States than in other countries. And like when the same conference that I was doing the first vibe coding hackathon thing at, uh, there was a person there. It was in Japan, and there was someone who raised this issue of like, well, what about the data center energy use? And the back of the envelope calculation suggested that like just heating toilet seats in Japan was a similar energy expense. So like it's how do you value I guess ultimately the CO2, right? Like the heat we can put to good uses.
I saw a comparison of like one burger chain is like a medium-sized data center usage, same in a year, and you can talk about, or maybe it was the same water usage again. I might be confusing it. Point being that like you can kind of make these funny comparisons, and there are like ways that they stand up and don't. There's a lot of other things, that are, I guess, involved, whether it's the sound or like, whether it's like where they are, whether it's heat, like what.
Yeah, I mean, there's some downsides to data centers too, but
right.
Maybe we'll put them in orbit later. You never know. But
Exactly.
like I think that we're almost too far down the path of relying. I will admit to being a bit of a techno optimist, but I think it's a little bit late now to turn back the clock and make different decisions 50 years ago. And so like maybe kind of like our best hope for solving some of the world's problems is creating super intelligent systems and unlocking the next level of scientific advance.
We weren't doing great before. I mean, you know what I mean? Maybe it's
Well, we had
like
fewer people, right? So, but yeah, I mean,
right.
like everybody saw global
Maybe
warming coming for
if we
50
give
years, right?
access to more people and don't just centralize it around a few companies, which
Mhm.
is what's happening a lot of right now.
Well, you're just gonna have to make your own, right? And
Mhm.
luckily, like, we're in the era of, like a lot of the open source models for LLMs they turn out to be significantly cheaper to train because it's always easier to do something the second time, right?
Mhm.
So I think that we're going to see fast followers and more access. Um, but at some level, this stuff becomes geopolitical, right? Like
Yeah.
it's
Well, anything that's polarizing does. People latch onto it, the midterms, like then you're getting your news from ridiculous places and sensational stories, not least of all, not just political, national, emotions, but lots of geopolitical, international being like, oh, data centers is what's dividing them right now. Yeah, let's just fund that a little bit.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Let's push on that
happening.
thread. I know.
Ultimately, look, like conspiracies aside, these things, like you say, are moving along. We're going to see so much benefit from it. Like I like to try to post positive stuff on LinkedIn regularly of how these things
Yeah,
and technologies are impacting like our health and wellness to like every day amazing things in biology and healthcare are being, shown. Like, so that's stuff of like the time between now and when it's going to actually save your or your family member's life. It may well change your opinion on these sorts of things. And
yeah,
maybe it was like our kiddo, he's like, oh, I hate AI. I'm like, what is it going to take your jobs? He's like, no, game RAM has gone up. All my gamer friends are complaining about it. So I was like, do you think
Yeah,
RAM is better
that's
spent
fair.
there or working on AI healthcare? He's like, whatever, you're just doing a lot of prompts,
yeah,
So it is
Well,
funny. It's where
gaming is why we have the GPUs in the first place.
that's a
So
good
don't
point.
knock the games.
yeah.
So
So
we're at the top of the hour. I want to be
yeah,
sensitive to your time. You did mention data centers in space. Did you guys invest in SpaceX?
I was an early investor 8 years ago, but I recently got out because I don't want to support Elon Musk anymore.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Rob, what about you? Where you at?
I'm a big fan of SpaceX. I think they're doing amazing things.
Awesome.
And Yeah, no, I think it's only going to, another nice thing about Silicon Valley is that, there is a tradition and a history here of basically, when people make money, they recycle it back into the environment. And, it's like in other places, maybe people they're more quick to buy boats and art and tax dodges and things like that. But part of the culture of Silicon Valley is a culture of creation. And, I think that the investments that are being made in
Very creative.
SpaceX are effectively going to cause an entire ripple effect of new ideas in Silicon Valley, and I'm just excited to see more capital coming into the area, frankly. And I think it's deserved. I think if you look
Mhm.
at the track record of what the San Francisco Bay Area has created in the last 40 years, like yes, there are some problematic things, but your life is dramatically different than it would have been without the people that are here inventing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
love
and and SpaceX was California, is LA actually, I think a lot more, but
that.
yeah, I agree. California is
I
very
think it, I
creative
think
and
it, it
highly.
arguably comes from the culture of Silicon Valley, is what I would
I would
say.
say so.
Risk
Totally.
risk
Yeah,
taking,
I agree
techno
with that.
optimism,
Yeah.
bold
Yeah,
bold
big
risks.
ideas.
Yeah, big
I so
True.
ideas.
sad.
Yeah.
I
It's
do
not
agree with people.
traditional JPL or NASA
Yeah, and
in
also,
LA.
like
That's true.
all three of us met, I think, in our late 20s at Burning Man, and
Or
I think
Pasadena,
it's
in
interesting.
Pasadena actually, in
Yeah, but like
Orlando
this
House.
this is also part of the culture of
Orlando.
Silicon Valley, right? It's about doing it for yourself and taking risks and doing that in a respectful way, but having fun with it. And so I don't know. I like it here because of that reason.
Yeah,
I
me
think it's
too.
like a really good, and I'm glad we brought it to this point. We've been on a real journey with this call, but like maybe we can leave on an optimistic, like a note, what you're really excited about, and maybe sort of a call to action for anybody watching this of something to explore, some sort of like
But
something optimistic, something you're
I,
excited about, something to explore, something inspirational. Go ahead,
a
Joseph.
bit about what you're saying. Like I'm not supporting Elon Musk's mission, what he's recently been doing and his ketamine abuse and all of that. So I agree with Rob that it's great that space is going to become a topic, and the rich millionaires and billionaires now that are coming from that are going to be able to invest more into space. But there's tons of other rocket companies actually. There's Orbital Sciences, there's Rocket Lab, there's There's a bunch of other ones that are doing spin launch. There's a bunch. And my friend is doing Orbital, which is doing space data centers, but it's not Elon Musk. And so there's tons of other places you can invest. And some
That's
of them are
true.
public that you can get entirely a lot more upside actually, because SpaceX is a bit overvalued at 2 trillion
Have you
and
guys
almost no
seen For All
revenue.
Mankind, by the way?
Sorry.
Have you seen For All Mankind on Apple TV? Oh man, it's an alternative history of the space, space race and where it goes. I love it because it's like not a dystopian sci-fi, but is really exciting, like to see what's happening in space. I think that there's a lot of like potential there. I think it's only like Rob says, these things are going to fund stuff going back, even if small amounts go back into the world and really benefiting humanity. I think we're going to see so much positive stuff. Education's being disrupted, meeting kids where they're at. Like I say, healthcare, I think, is really, amazing things happening in healthcare. I'm very optimistic. I'm very also, I know there's going to be bumps in the road. I say to my kiddo who's 13, you're going to probably be okay. Like it's anyone graduating the next 5 years, it's a little bit going to be some rocky stuff long term. And I think that he's going to be maybe getting out of college in like, whatever it is, 8 years or 7 years. I think there's going to be a little bit easier. Things will have stabilized a little bit. But that said, I do believe that even on the other side of some bumpy times, there's going to be a lot of potential, a lot of like human flourishing, a lot of things that we're struggling with now that we have never done well. Cultural communication issues, resource management. There's plenty of food out there, but with this horrible organization and resource management, things that AI could be really good at helping. So I am optimistic, even though if I know there's going to be some bumpiness along the way. So I would encourage anybody where you're at, how you can continue to lead, let your curiosity guide you, both in your personal life, how to use these new tools, but also in your work, so that you can be the most valuable, so that your job can be the most fulfilling and lower stress, hopefully, than earlier. For me, that I think is my best advice I could give to anybody.
Yeah. Well, I would just say that like we started with agency, and I think that is ultimately the scarce resource. So, you don't have to wait for someone to give you permission to do something. If you have an idea, you can try to make it. And these AI tools that are around now are incredibly enabling for people to try and do that. So, get inspired and learn how to do it, and maybe you'll create something that other people think is cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great,
Thanks,
great
Rob.
ending.
Joseph, what do you got?
Well,
Any final words?
well, invest in things that are not Elon Musk and are gonna build amazing things in space. Blue Origin.
I would
Yeah.
just say haters gonna hate.
Haters gonna hate. That's the
Haters are
truth.
gonna hate. Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much, guys.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, guys. Have a
Yeah.
great day.
All right. Catch
Thanks,
y'all
guys.
next week.